Cant Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @CuneReview, that is @CuneReview. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@cunereview.com, that is INFOR@CUNEREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976, that's 0141 772 3976.
This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 2nd of August 2023, from the business section. Edinburgh Airport expands passenger food and drink offering. This article is by Brian Donnelly. A Scottish airport has said it is to increase its passenger food and drink offering. Edinburgh Airport is expanding its food and beverage outlets for passengers as it looks to welcome new and exciting brands to the terminal. The airport is Scotland's busiest, with more than 14 million passengers expected to pass through this year. It said 6 new spaces are available to provide additional options for the airport's growing passenger base. The airport also said it is keen to hear from a diverse range of brands, including local Scottish brands and globally recognised brands, to cater to its diverse passenger mix. 6 opportunities are being released to the market across 4 categories: casual dining, premium bar, fast casual and grab and go, with all units expected to be operating and serving passengers by December 2024. Gail Taylor, Chief Commercial Officer, Non-Aero, said, "Providing options for passengers is something we look to do so at every stage of their journey through the airport, and our retail estate forms a key part of that." She also said, "We work with some fantastic brands to offer a diverse mix of food and beverage selections, and as we plan for future growth at the airport, we want to welcome more brands to Edinburgh Airport, ensuring our passengers have plenty of choice. We are excited about these opportunities and are keen to hear from a range of interested parties, from local and Scottish names to internationally recognised brands. We want to work with partners who can deliver additional choice for our passengers, helping them mark the beginning or end of their trip with a memorable Edinburgh Airport experience." This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 2nd of August 2023, from the Voices section. Politicians set for a busy summer performing on the fringe. This article is by Alison Rowett. There it is on the kitchen calendar, between the dentist and giving the dog a flea tablet, so it must be true. Yet still I keep checking the ticket just in case I imagined it. Here we go, sure enough. Ian Dale, all talk with Nicola Sturgeon, MSP, Thursday, 10th of August, 2023, 1300 hours, Pentland Theatre, Edinburgh. Yes, that would be the same Nicola Sturgeon, MSP, who was arrested, questioned and released without charge as part of a major ongoing police investigation into SNP finances. In the circumstances, you might well have thought the last place the former First Minister, a solicitor by training, would want to be is before a live audience being asked questions on anything under the Edinburgh sun by an interviewer who collects political scalps the way others bag club card points. But what do civilians like me and you know of show business and its ways? We are talking about the fringe, after all, the place where politicians come to show their more human, hopefully funny sides. Like that old trooper Marx almost said, history repeats itself, first as tragedy, second as farce, and finally as a fringe show. The artist formerly known as Scotland's First Minister is not alone in her desire for the August spotlight. Her festival diary is relatively empty compared to what her predecessor Alex Salmond has planned. His show, The Eyes Have It, running from August the 4th to the 13th, invites audiences to play their part in feisty parliamentary-style debate on the great issues of the day. Among the cast of what seems like thousands are Mr. Salmond, Natch, David Davis, former Secretary of State, John Bercow, ex-Speaker of the Commons, Henry McLeish, another former First Minister, Joanna Cherry, KC, MP, and Mick Lynch, RMT General Secretary. Chuckle, brothers and sisters, every one. Here in Glasgow, we can only pray the show tours, preferably somewhere far away. Do not worry if you cannot make the Sturgeon or Salmond dates. There is always the latest performer in the role of First Minister Humza Yousaf, talking to Ian Dale on August 11th. With lots of new material to share from his independence prospectuses, an hilarious and informative time will be had by all. You may wonder why any politician bothers with the fringe. It's summer. Why not holiday with their nearest and dearest away from the capital crowds? Some have more time on their hands than others. The rest, and that includes you, Mr. Yousaf, can probably tell themselves that appearing on the fringe is simply politics by another means. There has long been an association between the two worlds. Many a future member of the ruling classes has ventured north at one point to try their hand at performing. If politics didn't scoop them up, the BBC usually did. Today, a festival goer can hardly move for the number of stand-ups doing political routines, the more vicious the better. Do not listen to those who say these performances are of no consequence. Who do you think got rid of Boris, if not the late-night lads and lassies at the assembly rooms? It was only a matter of time before politicians cut out the middlemen and staged their own shows, or appeared as headline acts for others. In most cases, they are motivated by sheer ego. Basically old hams at heart, they are unable to resist the roar of the grease paint and the smell of the cheesy chips. For others, Edinburgh in August offers something far more important and lasting. It is a showcase, a chance to display one's talents to any potential employers and commissioning editors. With a general election on the way, it has never been more important to get one's face out there. Appearing on the fringe has another purpose for politicians, one that is rarely, if ever, spoken about. It is a sensitive subject, but we are all grown-ups here. For some, taking part in the fringe is a form of healing, an opportunity to release steam, work through concerns, and return to the fray refreshed. In hindsight, we can perhaps see some of this going on last year with Nicola Sturgeon. She had a very busy Edinburgh in 2022, talking about herself or interviewing others, including Brian Cox. The star of Succession told her that getting older had its benefits, among them the freedom to say and do what he wanted. I just don't give a ... any more, you know what I mean, to which the then First Minister replied, I can't wait to reach that stage. At another event, she hinted that the SNP might go into the next Scottish Parliament election without a new leader. The signs were there. Here was a woman looking to change her life, shake the kaleidoscope of fate, and see where the pieces landed. If only we had listened more carefully, paid closer attention to the signals. As it was, the news of her resignation came clean out of the blue and left the chatterati looking like absolute pillocks. I think I speak for the entire country when I say that can never be allowed to happen again. So this year, let us be alive to the possibilities of the fringe and its impact on politics. Take Mr. Salmon's show, The Hills Have Eyes, or whatever its proper title. Please don't make me go on the site again to check, I beg you. By inviting students from 2 city schools, Craigmount and Boroughmuir, the event will show politics at its big tent, welcome all ages best. As you can see from the lineup, Eye of the Tiger welcomes participants of different stripes, all determined to get along for the greater good. What a fine example to set. And I bet the 5th and 6th years wipe the floor with the older crowd. On the pupils, show them how it's done. One day, when the festival is over and summer's warmth has long given way to winter's chill, we can only hope that the lessons of the fringe will be remembered by those who took part. Indeed, if all politics was conducted in the same spirit as exists in Edinburgh in August, what a different position Scotland might be in today. No falling out, no heated demos, no egg throwing. One big happy family. That's what we would be. Like the song says, wouldn't that be loverly? This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday, the 2nd of August 2023, from the business section. Scotch whisky giant Diageo slams alcohol duty hammer blow. This article is by Scott Wright. Drinks giant Diageo has hailed a 12% rise in global Scotch whisky sales as a senior executive condemned controversial changes to the alcohol duty system in the UK. The Johnnie Walker distiller reported a 5.1% rise in operating profit to £4.6 billion, as organic net sales climbed by 6% to £17.1 billion for the year ended June the 30th. It highlighted double-digit percentage growth across its Scotch whisky, tequila and beer portfolios, with Guinness recording its biggest year in its 264-year history. The results were announced on the day a new alcohol duty system was introduced in the UK, which has resulted in the largest duty increase on Scotch whisky in 40 years. The change, which was first announced in the spring budget, will increase the tax burden on the average priced bottle of Scotch whisky to 75% from 70%. Ewan Andrew, Diageo's Global Supply Chain and Procurement President and Chief Sustainability Officer, said the company's whisky sales during the period had been across the board. Sales of flagship brand Johnnie Walker, the blended Scotch, increased by 15%, while single malts grew by 16% amid strong growth in Asia-Pacific, North America and Latin America. Mr. Andrew said, "Every month there are 400 million consumers choosing to drink Scotch globally. That is a massive number, and nearly a quarter are choosing Johnnie Walker, and nearly a third of Johnnie Walker drinkers are now female." While Diageo was reporting strong whisky sales and Mr. Andrew underlined its confidence of future growth, he criticised the UK government's decision to increase duty on Scotch in its home market. He fears the hike will have a damaging effect on smaller distillers which rely heavily on UK consumers. "In the UK market it is certainly a headwind," Mr. Andrews said. "We said in March, when it came out, that it would be a hammer blow to the industry, in particular to the consumers and the pubs in the UK. I think that absolutely stands true. We had a commitment from the UK government to look at making Scotch and gin producers more competitive, and that is not what has happened. We continue to call on government to review and make it a more fair and equitable scheme. It's been around for 200 years now. 1823 was the Duty Act, and to me it's quite shocking they have come out with a 10% increase. I am not a supporter. I think that it causes probably some of the smaller players who are reliant on the domestic market problems. Diageo has got some natural insulation with its global footprint. The UK is the 5th biggest global market for the Scotch whisky industry, and it needs to be seen as competitive and at the right price points. It needs to encourage all of us to continue to invest in Scotch. The results were the first announced by Diageo since the sudden death of former Chief Executive Sir Ivan Menezes in June. Sir Ivan has been succeeded by Deborah Crewe, who had already named by the company as his successor under a planned transition. Shares in Diageo closed up 10.5p or 0.31% at 3,408p. This is from the Herald Scotland of Wednesday the 2nd of August 2023 from the Voices section. The hidden key factor in solving football's on-field behaviour problem. This article is by James Morgan. You might have read a story doing the rounds this morning about plans afoot in England to penalise players who surround referees to contest their decisions. We've got to fundamentally reset the behaviour of players and coaches from the top to the bottom of the game and give referees the best level of protection. Mark Bullingham, the English FA chief executive, is quoted as saying, "Referees are going to be far stricter on how they interpret things. For example, it won't be acceptable in any way for players to surround referees, and that will lead to a yellow card right away." The move has been made as part of a new charter governing player behaviour during matches, but which also will extend to punishments for heinous acts such as tragedy chanting. About time too. And what of Scotland? It is true that the feedback we get is that people are put off getting involved in refereeing because of the difficult circumstances that they face in terms of players' conduct towards referees. There is a danger that prospective referees may be put off because of what happens at the top level of the game. Now, I have no evidence or indication in Scotland that any of our Grade 1 officials are anything other than quite capable of taking on board the sort of situations that they are faced with on a weekly basis. But we would definitely like to see more fair play and respect toward the refereeing profession in the game of football in Scotland. No doubt action will be forthcoming, but this is not some new statement of intent from the office of Crawford Allen, the head of referee operations, but rather an extract from an interview in 2005 given by the late David Taylor, once of the Scottish Football Association, but then a member of UEFA's control and disciplinary body. Allen would no doubt approve, because the issue of respect in football has been something that has been of real concern for some time. The fixture has spent a good part of the past month watching a lot of grassroots football, and it is clear where the seeds are sown, and that a good deal more could be done to prevent it. At the weekend, I took in the Glasgow City Cup at Glasgow Green. It was a dank, dreary day, one for heavy rain jackets and sturdy umbrellas. Nevertheless, there was a cheer in the air, a youthful exuberance that is found at any of these events where young footballers, not long out of nappies, get an early taste of competitive action. Of course, where there are young footballers, there are also baying parents, and there are unscrupulous coaches who are often more intent on winning matches than on developing footballers. Some might say winning and development go hand in glove, and they are probably correct, but the nuance is important, not at any cost. Of course, the vast majority of grassroots coaches are balanced, sentient individuals, but not all. This weekend, I heard one parent shout, "Take him out," to their son. On another occasion, I watched a young boy kick through the shin of another young boy. It took 3 appeals from the coach of the boy who had been fouled to earn a free kick, as his opposite number turned a blind eye. When the same young lad stepped up and smashed the ball into the net, a form of vindication for a frankly dreadful tackle, the coach of the offending team shouted with glee, "No goal. You can't score from a free kick." It was a sudden and miraculous recall of the rule book, given the utter amnesia that had followed the foul which had led to the set piece. So, what is the correlation between respect and a Sunday morning tournament in Glasgow? Well, if the changes in England bring about the necessary effect, then it will be all well and good. One might be a byproduct of the other, of course. But having witnessed some of the shenanigans at grassroots football matches over the years, and much more recently, it's fair to say that a good proportion of the problems pertaining to respect in football start in those earliest years, when bad behaviour is tolerated among players, coaches and professionals, and not with the professionals of today.
This is from the Herald on Thursday the 3rd of August 2023, from the news section. Data maps show the impact of losing Glasgow's night bus services. This article is written by Katrina Stewart. New data shows just how dramatic the effect would be of withdrawing Glasgow's night bus services from the city. The Urban Big Data Centre, based at the University of Glasgow, has created 2 maps showing the current coverage of the nighttime routes and what that would look like if the services stop. Last month, First Glasgow announced that 11 routes in the city would be axed as of July the 31st, but then gave an 11th hour reprieve following robust opposition. Now the services are planned to run until August the 20th, when drivers will be redeployed to bolster increased services on the 2 and 3 routes, which serve more than 600,000 people per month. First Glasgow said passenger numbers had fallen on the night bus routes to such an extent that they were no longer financially viable. The firm also said that difficulties in recruiting new staff meant that drivers were being moved from the night bus services to increase capacity on the 2 and 3. This move will see Service 2, which runs from Faifley through the city centre to Bailston, increase in frequency to every 10 minutes. Meanwhile, Service 3, which runs from Drumchapel through the city centre to Govan, will increase in frequency to every 12 minutes. However, the maps from the Urban Big Data Centre set out starkly how difficult it will be for people, whether nighttime workers or revellers enjoying the nighttime economy, to make it home in the small hours. According to the figures, some 285,598 households are in reach within 60 minutes of the city centre after midnight. If the night bus services stop, then this figure will drop to 80,915, or a reduction from 46% to 13%. The area of travel will see a significant change from routes going in almost all compass points from the centre of Glasgow to narrow corridors west and south. It has been suggested that McGill's bus company could take over some, but not all, of the routes. However, in an interview last week with the Herald, the boss of McGill's, Ralph Roberts, said the firm had paused plans to await a final answer on the future of the services from First Bus. The end of the routes has been widely criticised by politicians from across parties, including First Minister Humza Yousaf and former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon. Passengers and third sector groups who say low-paid people will be hardest hit by the change. That article was written by Katrina Stewart. This is from the Herald on Thursday the 3rd of August 2023, from the news section. Turkey and Syria earthquakes. Scots raise £13 million in aid. This article is written by Gabriel Mackay. More than £13 million has been raised in Scotland to help those affected by two devastating earthquakes in Turkey and northwest Syria. On February the 6th of this year, a quake measuring 7.8 on the Richter scale, the biggest since 1939, struck with an epicentre near Gaziantep. 9 hours later, a second quake, almost as powerful, was recorded with the two seismic events, leaving tens of thousands of people dead. At least 58,000 people lost their lives, with many more left homeless in freezing winter weather. Since then, those displaced have faced flash floods and, more recently, the baking summer temperatures, which have affected southern Europe and the Middle East. The Disasters Emergency Committee, a UK-based organisation which brings together 15 leading UK aid charities to raise funds quickly and efficiently in the wake of such events, launched an appeal, which it says has now become the third largest in its history. 6 months on from the disaster, donations from Scotland have exceeded £13 million, with more than £150 million now raised across the UK. Saleh Saeed, Chief Executive of the Disasters Emergency Committee, returned this week from visiting DEC-funded projects in Gaziantep, where he met people affected by the earthquakes. They included Zainab and Mehmet, whose farmhouse was destroyed in the earthquake, and have received supermarket vouchers to help buy food and other essentials from DEC charity British Red Cross. Across both countries over the first 3 months following the earthquake, almost half, 48%, of aid expenditure went on providing cash payments to more than 40,000 of the families most in need. Making direct payments via cash or vouchers is a very efficient way of delivering aid when local markets are functioning, reducing transport and administration costs and allowing people to choose how best to meet their personal needs, for example on food, medicine or rent. Mr. Saeed said, "It was humbling to meet Zainab and Mehmet and hear how they and their 7 children had been trapped under the rubble. Thankfully they all survived, although Zainab couldn't walk for a month or so, and the trauma they are suffering is evident. The whole family is living in a tent while they wait for their new home to be built, and the conditions are very harsh. When I visited last week, it was uncomfortably hot, about 41 degrees centigrade, but when the earthquake struck, the temperatures were freezing." DEC charities are working tirelessly to help people cope and make life more comfortable, from mobile physiotherapy clinics helping people recover from their injuries, to psychological support for children, to providing hygiene and sanitation to avoid the spread of deadly diseases. This is vital, life-changing help. Your donations over the last 6 months have been remarkably generous and are helping DEC charities continue to address the people's most pressing needs on both sides of the border. It's clear it will be a very long road to recovery from this terrible disaster, but we met so many people in Turkey who wanted us to thank the British public and all who have supported them through the DEC. Thank you to everyone who has donated. We are all incredibly grateful." The appeal received a £500,000 donation from the Scottish Government, on top of the £1 million the DEC receives through the Humanitarian Emergency Fund. The money was distributed to the British Red Cross, Christian Aid, Islamic Relief, Oxfam, Save the Children and Tear Fund. Through UK Aid Match, the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Department has matched UK donations pound for pound up to £5 million, doubling the value of the public's own donations to that level. The DEC said that in the 6 months since the disaster, 40,300 households received cash or voucher payments to help meet their basic needs. In addition, 427,000 people have been provided with access to safe drinking water, 201,000 people have received emergency food or a voucher for food, and 48,200 people accessed health services such as mobile clinics, medical kits and free medication. Syria is currently in its 12th year of civil war, with 60% of people in the region affected by the earthquakes already being displaced, many of them living in extreme hardship. Using donations to the appeal, DEC charities and their local partners are delivering vital aid in both government and non-government controlled areas of Syria, ensuring people have enough to eat, clean water to drink and safe places to stay. That article was written by Gabriel Mackay.
From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 4th of August 2023, from the news section. Barlinnie faces catastrophic failure if new jail pushed back further. By Craig Williams. The Governor of Scotland's largest prison has warned it faces a catastrophic failure if the completion date for the 140-year-old jail's replacement is pushed back further. HMP Barlinnie was ruled to no longer be fit for purpose in 2020, with a new jail initially set to open in 2025 to replace it, but the deadline has now been pushed back to 2027. The Glasgow jail is running at 140% capacity, with just under 1,400 prisoners, when it was designed for 987, according to Governor Michael Stoney. The state-of-the-art replacement is expected to include a reduction in the size of housing blocks from 30 to 20, and will see football pitches and ensuite cells introduced. In April, First Minister Humza Yousaf said he would investigate an estimated £300 million overspend on the replacement HMP Glasgow. But Mr Stoney said the current prison cannot handle any more delays. He told the BBC, "This prison can't last that much longer. The infrastructure fails constantly. At some point it may be a catastrophic failure, by then it's too late. We know that day is coming. A lot of my time is just trying to keep the prison functional. If dates like building and completion stretch further, then the risk gets greater year on year." An inspection in 2020 found that overcrowding in the Tories prison could be in breach of UN human rights agreements. Mr Stoney also highlighted issues with the prison's ability to prevent strong drugs being smuggled in, keeping enemy prisoners separate, and staff assaults. The Governor said the new prison could lead to a 20% reduction in reoffending due to increased rehabilitation services. He said, "I have made bold inferences that would reduce reoffending by the people that pass through our doors by about 20%. That's because, if we are confident in our capacity and the professionalism of our staff and the care and compassion they have, they will make a huge difference if given the time. We have to be bold about it. We are getting a big investment and we have to be bold by saying we'll give you a big return." And that article is by Craig Williams. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 4th of August 2023, from the business section. Orkney, Scottish brewer moves into can market for first time. Article by Scott Wright, Deputy Business Editor. The Orkney Brewery has announced the addition to 3 canned beers to its cask, bottle and keg portfolio. The Runic range marks the first time the Culau-based brewer has entered the canned market, with the new product aimed primarily at the UK market. The 3 styles, Scarra Blonde IPA, Hafen Helles Lager and Brodgar Beer, are packaged in 440ml cans with striking new designs using rune symbols linking to key locations and landmarks in Orkney. The beers will initially be available in the brewer's new shop, which is due to open in Kirkwall soon, the brewery itself and online. Orkney also plans to introduce the range as independently speciality off-trade stores. Norman Sinclair, Managing Director of the Orkney Brewery, said, "We wanted to introduce a canned range in response to customer and consumer requests, but didn't want to just reformat what's an already extremely successful and authentic premium bottled portfolio. Our new cans therefore represent an incremental step forward for the brewery, building on our achievements to date, while hopefully appealing to new customers and the many visitors who travel to Orkney each year." Craig Stephen, the Orkney Brewery's commercial manager, added, "We were very keen to introduce the iconography of runic symbols to the branding for the new range to reflect the Norse legacy of the islands. We spent several months pulling this together, piece by piece, and wanted to tie in the launch with the imminent opening of the new brewery shop in Kirkwall. We are delighted with the beers and believe the packaging is striking, unique, and maintains our premium appeal, which is what is driving our performance across all channels." And the article was by Deputy Business Editor Scott Wright. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 4th of August 2023, from the news section, "Scandal of 60 deaths of homeless in Glasgow's last resort hotels." This article is an exclusive by Martin Williams, senior news reporter. Calls have been made for a public inquiry as over 60 homeless people have died in Glasgow after being put in emergency accommodation over the past 3.5 years. Housing campaigners are demanding urgent action over the scandal, with 9 deaths of homeless housed in last resort hotels and bed and breakfasts recorded by the City Council in May and June alone, a rate of 1 a week. It comes as hotel owners in the city are due to be paid an extra £3 million in the next year to house the homeless temporarily, while the cost of the council will double. The amounts paid to owners of hotels used by the council to provide the emergency accommodation is set to rise from £20.3 million to £23.5 million, but the cost to the council is due to rise from £5.5 million to £10.5 million from housing benefit payments. Some 51 deaths in hotels and bed and breakfasts have occurred between March 2020, when the COVID pandemic broke, and March this year. The City Council said that any death in emergency accommodation is hugely regrettable. Campaigners have raised concerns that B&Bs and hotels, which are used as a last temporary accommodation resort, are not fit to deal with people in crisis, and that consequently, homeless people were losing out on access to drug and alcohol addiction services and mental health care. The Scottish Tenants Organisation said it was seeking a public inquiry into what it described as the scandal of the deaths. They say that £26 million should be spent on improving conditions in the hotels, including giving the homeless 1 hot meal a day and having wraparound services for addiction and mental health care. They are also calling on Police Scotland to tackle drug dealing in and around these hotels they believe is playing a part in what caused unnecessary deaths. Sean Clerkin, the SDO's campaign coordinator, said, "These Dickensian conditions cannot be tolerated any longer, and what we need is the political will and monies to improve conditions for homeless men and women." Living Rent said that Glasgow City Council needed to end their reliance on hotels and bed and breakfasts as a sticking plaster over the homelessness and housing crises. Aditi Jehangir, Secretary of Living Rent, said, "These days should shame our politicians into action. We have the resources to stop this. No one should be dying due to their lack of permanent housing, not least when they're under Glasgow City Council's care. Alongside many other failures, there is a serious failure to provide long-term housing for all those in need. We need to secure long-term social housing, stronger protections against eviction, and greater support to stay put. The government needs to take immediate steps to alleviate the housing crisis, not cut the social housing budget. Housing should be a right, not a luxury, but with cuts to social housing funding, the government is turning the crisis into a disaster." The council has said that it wants to reduce the use of B&Bs and hotels, but said, due to the significant demand for emergency accommodation, they need to use a range of establishments in the city. In 2022-23, hotels and B&Bs were paid just over £20.3 million, with £11.8 million coming from housing benefit payments and another £3,248,066 from COVID income from the Scottish Government. This year, 23-24, it is budgeted that hotels and B&B owners will be paid just over £23.5 million, an increase of more than £3 million. Housing benefit will pay for nearly £13 million, but with no income from COVID from the Scottish Government, the Glasgow City Health and Social Care Partnership will have to meet some £10.5 million of the bill. The hotels that have been used by the council include the Alexander Thompson Hotel, St Enoch Hotel and the Charles Riley Mackintosh in the city centre, Chez Nous in the city's West End, and the Queen's Park Hotel in the south side. It was confirmed by Police Scotland that, as of February, 8 people died at the St Enoch Hotel, with 4 at the Chez Nous Guesthouse and 1 at Hill Head Hotel. 9 have died in Alexander Thompson Hotel, with 7 passing away at the city's Queen Park Hotel, while there are another 7 at the Rennie Mackintosh Station Hotel. The deaths have appeared after March 2020, with most believed to be during the pandemic and related to drug overdoses. When the lockdown began in March, hundreds of rough sleepers were brought in off the streets to help slow the spread of coronavirus. Homeless people are also put up temporarily, such as furnished flats in council halfway houses. When the temporary accommodation is full, and as a last resort, they were placed in hotels and bed and breakfasts. But campaigners raised concerns that B&Bs and hotels were not fit to deal with people in crisis. Health chiefs in Glasgow last month sent out an appeal to landlords for homes to rent for the homeless, while acknowledging that there is a risk of breach of its legal duties to provide temporary accommodation. According to a June analysis, the Glasgow City Health and Social Care Partnership, HSCP, was 1,600 let short of the 4,500 it needs annually. HSCP officers wrote to all registered social landlords, RSLs, requesting 60% of all social housing lets for the resettlement of homeless households. Research by Solace, which represents council chief executives and senior managers, revealed last month that there were 243,603 people in the waiting list for social housing in Scotland, but the number of annual allocations across the entire country is just 26,102. Data from the quarterly statistics on house building and affordable housing supply has revealed that the number of affordable houses starting construction in the 2022-2023 financial year had fallen to 6,987, down from 8,227 in 2021-2022 and 12,039 in 2019-2020. A City Council spokesman said, "The Council is duty-bound to find and provide emergency accommodation for those who present as homeless. However, hotel and B&B accommodation accounts for around 15% of our total homelessness population, with the remaining 85% residing in more settled temporary furnished flat accommodation and supporting living environments. Glasgow Homelessness Services is working hard to ensure smooth transition out of hotels as quickly as possible. However, there remains considerable housing supply pressures. In the last 3 years, we have dealt with more than 36,000 referrals seeking emergency accommodation, and sadly 51 people residing in emergency accommodation have died in the same period. The causes of deaths are not due to a lack of permanent housing and are due to multiple factors including poor health, lifestyle and natural causes. All homeless people placed in hotel or B&Bs receive support from their allocated caseworkers, including homelessness casework teams and alcohol drug recovery services. Additionally, many hotels have enhanced care arrangements where supporting staff, including our directly commissioned third sector partners, are on hand. Our staff also engage directly with accommodation operators on a routine basis. All hotel staff, including security, have received harm reduction advice, naloxone training and mental health first aid training. Homelessness Services recently completed a major safeguarding exercise with all hotel and B&B residents, ensuring face-to-face engagement and an update on both their move-on plans, treatment and care. Glasgow Homelessness Services will continue to work closely with registered social landlords across the city to ensure we transition people out of hotels as quickly as possible. Housing Minister Paul McLennan said, "Every homeless death is a tragedy, and my condolences go to the friends and families affected in this way. We are committed to doing all we can to prevent homelessness from happening in the first place and reducing the use of temporary accommodation. We recognise the varying challenges existing across Scotland and that these cannot be addressed by one single solution. We recently committed at least £60 million to support a national acquisition plan to increase the supply of social and affordable housing. Other measures recently announced include working with social landlords to increase allocations to homeless households. One focus of the national mission on drug deaths is to strengthen partnerships between health and homelessness services to improve outcomes for people experiencing homelessness and multiple complex needs, including substance abuse." And that article was an exclusive by Martin Williams. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 4th of August 2023, from the news section, University of Edinburgh, strike cancelled after pay deductions halted, by Gabriel Mackay. The University of Edinburgh has agreed to end pay deductions for union members taking part in the marking and assessment boycott, with strike action set for September to be cancelled. The University and College Union is taking part in action short of a strike across the UK in a dispute over paying conditions, meaning coursework and exams will not be marked by their members. The action began on April 22nd, with the UCU stating that many members had been threatened with 50% or even 100% pay cuts. Staff at the University of Edinburgh took strike action in June after 50% deductions were applied, with a further walkout planned for September. However, the two sides have come together to agree that pay deductions will be paused, effective July the 1st, with the strike action cancelled. A statement issued by Professor Peter Matheson on behalf of the University of Edinburgh and Sophia Woodman and Kat Leland on behalf of the UCU Edinburgh said, "The University has agreed to pause deductions for those currently taking part in the MAB with effect from 1st of July 2023. Deductions up until this date will take place as previously notified unless national agreements supersede this. For the avoidance of doubt, deductions will be made from July pay in respect of the participation in June. However, no deductions will be made in August pay in respect of participation in July. This pause will not apply to any new action subsequent to the date of this statement by colleagues who have not previously taken part in the MAB or who have previously taken part but subsequently ended their participation. UCU Edinburgh has agreed that a strike action was called at the university due to the level of deductions. UCU Edinburgh will recommend to members to agree to cancel the strike dates scheduled for September and not seek authorisation for any further local strike action during the period of the mandate, ending 30 September, except in response to escalation by the university. Equally, the university will only review its position for the remainder of this mandate if UCU nationally or locally escalate the dispute. Escalation on both sides is taken to mean acting against either the terms or spirit of this agreement, resulting in further disruption to students. This period of relative calm will allow all staff to return to working normally, accepting that some UCU Edinburgh members may only begin to undertake outstanding marking and assessment when the dispute is settled nationally or the MEB is ended. The University and UCU Edinburgh have agreed that UCU Edinburgh will encourage members to prioritise outstanding marking so that this marking will be complete to allow the October exam boards to run smoothly. To achieve this goal, line managers will ensure that the appropriate prioritisation of marking is managed within the overall workload of individual members. And that article is by journalist Gabriel Mackay. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 4th of August 2023, from the sports section, BBC Scotland statement as broadcaster refused Celtic access, by David Irvine. BBC Scotland is still being denied access to Celtic press conferences, the broadcaster tonight confirmed. The broadcaster had been refused access to Brendan Rodgers' first press conference upon his return to Celtic last month, and it seems the issue between the club and BBC Scotland is ongoing, with Celtic coverage limited on Reporting Scotland. And a statement on air confirmed BBC Scotland has contacted Celtic over the denied access and is awaiting a response. Addressing the lack of comments from Rodgers in a report on the programme, presenter Lewis Irons said, "You may be wondering why there was no appearance by Brendan Rodgers in our report. Well, BBC News and Sport have been refused access to Celtic news conferences at the moment. The club has been contacted and is yet to respond. BBC Scotland says it is working with Celtic to resolve the issue." Celtic had refused the BBC access to speak to Rodgers as part of the press conference at Parkhead last month. A statement then from the BBC read, "BBC Scotland has asked Celtic for comment on the decision to deny the BBC access to the media conference and is awaiting a response." A spokesperson for Celtic said at the time, "We have raised a number of issues with the broadcaster which have yet to be addressed." And the article was by David Irvin. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 4th of August 2023, from the sports section, Michael Beale makes everything to prove call after Rangers revamp, by Christopher Jack, senior Rangers writer. Michael Beale admits his new-look Rangers have everything to prove as they aim to get their Premiership title bid off to a winning start against Kilmarnock. The Ibrox boss have extensively overhauled his squad during the close season, as 9 players have put pen to paper and several established stars have been allowed to move on. The likes of Glenn Kamara and Fashion Sakala will also exit sooner rather than later, while the future appears uncertain for John McLaughlin and Rabbi Matondo after they were left out of the squad for the Champions League clash with Servette. Rangers must now hit the ground running in the opening weeks of the campaign, and Beale knows supporters will be quick to judge those that have arrived as he puts his stamp on the side this summer. Beale said, "The squad that ended last year with the 92 points and a really good run. This group now has everything to prove. I have everything to prove. The club has too. We feel we've recruited some really good players, but that's from the past, and now it's important this team shows it on the pitch. It's one game at a time. I'm expecting a really tough game at Kilmarnock, and, for me, the proof in that will come with time and the results we get. Extremely satisfied with the support from the board. I sat here a few months ago when a lot of questions were coming this way, and I was very calm because I knew the plan. Since then, it's just been about executing it. I've been very fortunate that I've been right at the front of that with James Bisgrove and have been able to act quickly. So, I felt a lot of freedom in going to recruit the players. By the end of the window, you'll find that our net spend will be very small. It wasn't about asking the board for finance. It was about being able to reshape the squad, and, because of some of the contract situations at the end of the year and the salaries involved, I was able to do that. The proof of whether we've made the right decisions or not will be the results we have, and that's a lovely expectation that starts at Rugby Park, and I'm looking forward to that." And the article was by Christopher Jack, senior Rangers writer. From the Herald Scotland, Friday the 4th of August 2023, from the sports section, Scotland legend Joe Jordan launches new Hellas Verona kit, by journalist Gabriel Mackay. Scotland legend Joe Jordan has helped to launch Hellas Verona's new kit, an homage to the one he wore his only season with the Italian club 40 years ago. The former striker, known as Jaws due to his 2 missing front teeth, won the First Division with Leeds United and made over 100 appearances for Manchester United. Jordan was capped 53 times by Scotland and is the only Scottish player to have scored in 3 World Cups, with the last of these coming in his final cap against the USSR in 1982. The previous summer, he had swapped Manchester for Italy, signing for a fee of around £300,000 as he joined AC Milan. The Rossoneri had only recently gained promotion after being relegated as part of a betting scandal, and Jordan scored just 2 Serie A goals as he went straight back down. However, he hit 10 and 30 Serie B games the following campaign to get Milan promoted once again. Though he left that summer at the end of his contract, Jordan was named one of the club's 110 most important players of all time in 2009. Following his stint at San Siro, the Scotsman spent a single season with Verona in the 1983-84 season, and the Butteilles have commemorated that campaign with their new third kit. The shirt is all white with blue detailing, the same as the one Jordan wore in that campaign 40 years ago, and the legendary striker helped its launch. The club flew over to Bristol, where the 71-year-old lives, as part of their Edovonke Helias, Everywhere Helias, campaign, with the former striker posing by the harbour in the new shirt. The club said, "Hellas Verona are proud to present the new third match shirt, which the players will wear in the 2023-24 season, which sees an example of excellence wearing it 40 years after his only season in Giallo Blu, the unforgettable Scottish champion, Joe Jordan. Today, Jordan lives in Bristol, England, and that's where we went to present this very special kit, worn by one who, among others, wore the 1983-84 third kit." The launch was accompanied by a YouTube video soundtracked by Tartan Army anthem "We'll Be Coming", in homage to Jordan's international career. The kit features the logo which the club used at the time, with the 1983-84 season representing the first time it had appeared on the jersey. The 2 years are vertically embossed several times across the shirt. The blue detailing features FVFC 1903 on the back under the collar, and Hellas Verona FC inside the collar. Asked why he remained so beloved despite spending just 1 year with the club, Jordan told the club's website, "Honestly, I don't know. Not least because it wasn't an easy year for me. On the one hand, I had a few injury problems, and, on the other, there was a lot of competition at Verona at the time. It's not easy to get game time when your competition is Nanu Galtieri and Maurizio Aurelio, and frankly, they deserve to play. It's never easy not to be playing, but that remains a key season in my career, above all for what happened off the pitch. It was my third year in Italy, and, after the 2 at Milan, I was starting to understand the language a lot better and adapt to the lifestyle. And then, of course, Verona is, and was, a stunning city, where my daughters went to nursery for the first time and made their first friends. I remember seeing the Scottish flag in the Curva Sud, right in the middle of all the others. The Verona fans really impressed me. I remember well the noise of their singing, and the way they got behind their team. When Emiliano Maschetti, who was the sporting director at the time, came to Milan to talk to me, I was already convinced. I'd done my research. My daughter lives in Milan and, in fact, my grandchildren are Italian. I still hear from Domenico Volpati, an exceptional person, every now and then, too. I often come to Verona with the family because I love it. The city, the restaurants, Lake Garda. There's always a reason to come to Verona and spend time there. I go to the stadium with my wife whenever possible, too. And that article was by journalist Gabriel Mackay.
Herald Scotland, recorded on 7th of August 2023. Arts and Entertainments, charting the remarkable sporting career of cyclist Mark Cavendish, by Susan Swarbrick, columnist and senior features writer. What's the story? Mark Cavendish, never enough. I'll need more information. It's a new Netflix documentary charting the remarkable sporting career of cyclist Mark Cavendish. The rider known as the Manx Missile has earned a place in the history books as one of the greatest road sprinters of all time. His impressive palmarès includes winning 34 stages of the Tour de France, brackets, equalling the great Eddie Merckx, close brackets, and becoming world road race champion in 2011, brackets, the first British man to do so in 46 years, close brackets. An Olympic medal eluded him in both 2008 and 2012, before Cavendish took Omnium silver in the track in 2016 to fulfil that dream. But then, later that year, things began to implode. How so? At the end of 2016, Cavendish required only 4 more stages to equal Merckx's record and cement his legacy. Instead, he suffered 5 agonising years of injury, illness and depression. Then what? Every spectacular rise and fall needs a redemption story, and no one does redemption better than Mark Cavendish, a man renowned for his resilience, self-belief, and brutal honesty. This powerful and unflinching documentary grants exclusive access to the rider, his wife Peta, his teammates and coaches as he follows the road back to glory. When can I watch? Mark Cavendish Never Enough is available to stream on Netflix now. By Susan Swarbrick. Herald Scotland, recorded on Monday, 7th of August 2023. Arts and Entertainments. Politics proves a hot ticket at Edinburgh Festival, by Alison Rowett, Senior Politics and Features Writer. Sword carrier extraordinaire and leader of the Commons, Penny Mordaunt, took her turn yesterday. Harriet Harman, Mother of the Commons, is today. On Thursday, former First Minister Nicola Sturgeon warms up the stage for her successor, Humza Yousaf, on Friday. Their task? Sitting down with LBC presenter Ian Dale for 70 minutes of chat at the Edinburgh Festival. Dale's shows have become a fixture in the Fringe, with Mordaunt this year's biggest seller so far. That Dale's events and similar should be so popular seem to contradict the notion that the long-form political interview has gone the way of the Norwegian Blue. With perfect showbiz timing, the newsagents have been pondering the same. The hit podcast sees a pattern of politicians increasingly shunning interviews in favour of putting their own messages out on social media. The episode opened with Jeremy Paxman interviewing Chloe Smith in Newsnight in 2011. The encounter between the presenter and Tory junior minister is seen as a classic of old-school political interviewing. Is this some kind of joke? Paxman asks a flustered Smith. You ever think you're incompetent? At the time, it was Smith who took the flak, but you wonder what Twitter/X would make of the encounter now. As Emily Maitlis told her fellow newsagent, Lewis Goodall, the shouting down interview fell out of favour because the public get bored. It also felt a bit ugly and unfair. The uncomfortable truth for the media is that politicians don't need them as much as they once did. Maitlis has detected another trend, interviewees getting the upper hand. Not content to sit there passively, they will film the interview on their phone and send it to their followers. Elon Musk is a fan of the technique. There is a weird kind of democracy about how we do interviews now, says Maitlis. The long-form interviewers of old, Brian Walden, Robin Day, David Frost, and more recently John Humphreys, never had to put up with their guests filming them. Nor were there news channels in which politicians interviewed each other. Today, if you don't fancy talking in Laura Kuenssberg, there's always the option of Nadine Dorries on Talk TV, as Boris Johnson and others have found. Rob Burley, ex-BBC head of political programmes, now with Sky News, has written the best book in interviews. Why is this lying bee **** lying to me? The death of the political interview has been oft reported, he told Goodall, but this time it feels serious. What about podcasts? Haven't they replaced the half-hour or longer sit-down? Different atmosphere, different purpose, says Burley. Podcasts are conversational. They're not there to first and foremost hold a politician to account. The turning point in the tussle between media and politicians is widely held to be the 2019 general election, when Andrew Neil invited all the main party leaders to sit down for a live, long-form, one-to-one interview. Everyone turned up bar Boris Johnson, who said he would, but never did. Neil was furious and said so on air. It was the end of a democratic norm, says Burley. The accepted rule that politicians who wanted to lead the country would, at the very least, answer a few questions about their policies and themselves had been broken. Brian Walden, says Burley, thought the political interview could do a better job than Parliament at holding a politician to account. To hear Walden interview Margaret Thatcher in 1989, just after Chancellor Nigel Lawson had resigned, is to understand why the former Labour MP was and remains the best of the best. Back in Edinburgh, Dale sees his sessions as more podcasts than radio interviews. The conversational, get-to-know-you style yields its own results, he believes. Last year when I did Nicola Sturgeon, I got criticised by a lot of people for a so-called soft interview, he told the Herald's political correspondent Andrew Learmonth. Well, I thought, what did you think I was going to do? Shout at her? Just be gratuitously rude? It's not like that. The whole idea of these shows is for people to see politicians in the hall and get to know them a bit better. Ultimately, it is up to the public whether long-form interviewing survives. The market will decide, assuming people care enough one way or the other. Edinburgh suggests they are interested. The real test will be the next general election. In Rishi Sunak, we have a Prime Minister who is ill at ease in broadcast interviews, especially in Scotland where he has had tussles with STV's Colin Mackay and more recently the BBC's Martin Geisler. Similarly, Labour leader Keir Starmer already seems to be running out of patience with interviewers. For now, for politics, interviews, and for good or ill, all roads lead to Edinburgh. By Alison Rowett.
From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 7th of August 2023, from the news section. Man jailed after delivering wages to organised crime gang. Report by Gabriel Mackay. A man has been jailed after being found guilty of delivering wages to members of an organised crime gang. Gerard McTaggart, 47, was seen delivering bags containing thousands of pounds in cash to several locations linked to organised crime. The Glaswegian was seen meeting with associates from a prominent crime group in the city between May and October 2019. Officers watched him carry weighted carrier bags during 21 visits to premises connected to the group as part of a money laundering scheme. McTaggart, a plasterer, was arrested in Glasgow in October 2019 and found to be in possession of a carrier bag containing a total of £14,575 in notes. He was sentenced at the High Court in Lanark, having pled guilty at a hearing last month to being concerned in serious organised crime. After admitting to an offence under the Criminal Justice and Licensing Scotland Act 2010, he was sentenced to 4 years and 8 months behind bars. Kenny Donnelly, Deputy Crown Agent, Specialist Casework, said, Gerard McTaggart performed a specific function which was to deliver wages to family members of serious organised crime group nominals, as part of a money laundering operation. He was a high-profile figure within this crime group. Money laundering plays an integral role in a complex, large-scale operation which facilitates the criminal activity of others. The successful prosecution sends out a strong message about our determination to disrupt serious organised crime. We will continue to collaborate with our partners as a member of Scotland's Serious and Organised Crime Task Force to tackle serious organised crime, and this kind of case highlights the extensive work that has been ongoing against these groups. Detective Chief Superintendent Vicky Watson, Police Scotland's head of organised crime, said, McTaggart's conviction and sentencing for his criminality sends a clear message to anyone involved in serious organised crime that it has no place in our society, and we will continue to work in partnership to identify those responsible. This underlines our commitment to the country's serious organised crime strategy and continue to disrupt their activities to keep our communities safe. As part of one of Scotland's most prolific crime groups, McTaggart thought he was untouchable and above the law. However, our officers, working with partners, brought him to justice as part of Operation Escalade, which since 2014 has now seen nearly 50 people being convicted and jailed. And that report was by Gabriel Mackay. From the Herald Scotland, Monday the 7th of August 2023, from the Politics section, Stephen Flynn, SNP pact with Greens needed to govern firmly. Report by Jodie Harrison. The SNP's leader at Westminster has admitted he isn't in tandem with the Scottish Greens on some policy issues, but says the Holyrood pact between the parties is needed to govern Scotland firmly. Stephen Flynn MP said that tribal divisions among parties at Holyrood meant that it was more difficult to govern as a minority administration, such as that seen under former First Minister Alex Salmond. The agreement between the SNP and the SNP and Greens at Holyrood means the two parties command a majority over the other parties, something Mr Flynn said provides certainty. In an exclusive interview with the Herald, Mr Flynn said, "The dynamics of Holyrood now are much different from where we were in 2011. The constitutional divide post-2014 is much more tribal. Our partnership with the Greens provides certainty and the opportunity to govern firmly. It's no secret that in some issues I'm not in tandem with the Greens. We're there to govern for everyone in Scotland, and everyone's lives are challenging at the moment. There's a large group of people who are being squeezed all over the place. We need to ensure that what's coming out of Holyrood is mainly dealing with these concerns." Speaking to Kevin McKenna, Mr Flynn extended an olive branch to Angus MacNeil, who left the SNP Westminster group until at least October after being suspended for a week following a row with the Chief Whip. He said, "For Angus, you don't get to pick and choose when you get the whip. And maybe he's beginning to realise that. I don't have a problem with him having his own views and independence. I hope we can get to a point where there's an amicable outcome, but this requires action on both sides. Angus is a good man, his heart's in the right place, but I've been in politics long enough to know that desired outcomes don't always happen. And that article is by Jodie Harrison.
This article is from the Herald on Monday, the 7th of August, 2023. It is from the opinion section, and the headline is Bizarre Logic in Brexit Britain, and the report is by Ian McConnell. Some things never change was the adage that came to mind last week when reflecting on two very different topics, bank branch closures and the Brexit shambles. Both these matters have, in recent years, provided plenty about which to be miserable, and there has been something of a sad inevitability about each of them. The two subjects formed the basis of my columns in the Herald last week. The bank branch closure saga reared its ugly head again with the announcement late last month by Virgin Money, which takes in the Clydesdale Bank operation, that it was closing nearly one-third of its UK branch network. This impending closure of 39 branches will leave Virgin Money with just 91. In years gone by, there was much robust debate about branch closures, even where it was very small numbers. However, it seems to have been a while since the passion around this big issue dissipated. With the exception of a few voices, such as those of Trade Union Unite and some consumer champions, apathy now seems to be the order of the day when branch closures are announced. In the old days, it appeared that banks were almost embarrassed to announce the closure of branches, and they seemed very wary indeed about a potential backlash in political circles and among customers. That seems most certainly not to be the case now. Yes, footfall has fallen in branches. However, that does not make them any less valuable to those who are still in need of them, for a wide variety of reasons. It is all about costs, it seems, for banks, and branch closures can surely not be dressed up as something which serves customers. The huge problem now is that, among the big banks, branch closures are ubiquitous, so there is less prospect of customers pressurising the major players into a change of behaviour by voting with their feet. On the Brexit shambles front, at least there was an albeit small change of behaviour last week from the Conservative government. While this change looked to have been forced by the reality of the situation, it was not something which could have been taken for granted by businesses or anyone else, given the hidebound tendencies of the Brexiters who hold sway in the Conservative administration at Westminster. The Department for Business and Trade announced on Tuesday that recognition of the Conformité Européenne safety mark in Great Britain would for most goods be extended indefinitely beyond the most recent December 2024 deadline. Previously, it had been the intention of this Conservative government that recognition of the CE mark in Great Britain would come to an end soon after the country's departure from the European single market, and that only the UK Conformity Assessed Certification, UKCA, would be accepted. The list of goods for which recognition of the CE mark has been extended indefinitely by the Department of Trade and Business is extensive. The climb down has come in the face of serious concerns among businesses about the clock having been ticking on the tried, tested and trusted CE mark. There is no doubt that the climb down, which is surely another embarrassment for the Brexiters, is most welcome for everyone else. What was less welcome was the Conservative government appearing to try to claim that it had done something very positive, as opposed to merely warding off woe, of which it was firmly the architect. This disingenuous behaviour from the Tories, of course, also chimes with the "some things never change" adage. We have seen plenty of such conduct from the Conservatives since 2016. The backtracking and climb downs have sadly been too few and far between, but where they have occurred, they have been accompanied by plenty of spin, as the Conservative Brexiters have refused to take responsibility for the huge troubles they have caused. The spin this week, as the CE mark climb down was announced, was, even by the standards of the current vintage of Conservatives, somewhat remarkable. The Department for Business and Trade declared the Business Secretary acted urgently on this issue, to prevent a cliff edge moment in December 2024, when UKCA was set for entry. This intervention will ensure businesses no longer face uncertainty over the regulations and can cut back on unnecessary costs, freeing them up to focus on innovation and growth. The uncertainty was created by the Conservatives, and cliff edges, or the threat of them, have truly been a hallmark of the Tories and seem to have been more or less ever present since the Brexit vote. Remember when Lord David Frost was negotiating Brexit with the European Union in what was surely an unnecessarily aggressive style? Lord Frost has arguably, since stepping away from government duties, raised even more eyebrows with his strident views on key issues, including his comments on global warming last month. The Conservatives' logic last week was bizarre. It was them who insisted on, pursued and delivered a hard Brexit. As part of this, it was decided the CE mark would no longer be recognised on goods being placed on the market in Great Britain beyond the end of next year. This caused great uncertainty for businesses, and now the Conservative government is saying its intervention will ensure businesses no longer face uncertainty over the regulations. Yet, just to reiterate, the ruling Tories caused the uncertainty in the first place. Not for the first time, Brexit Britain has a real Alice in Wonderland feel about it. That report was by Ian McConnell.
The Herald on the 8th of August and the news section. Thriving Scottish Country Inn for sale by Scott Wright. A thriving Scottish country inn located in Dumfries and Galloway has been put for sale as its owners seek to exit after 10 years in charge. The award-winning Clachan Inn, based in the small village of St John's town of Dalry, is extremely popular amongst locals and visitors to the area on account of its fresh food, real ales and luxury accommodation. It has come onto the market following significant investment in the property over the years, which selling agent Christy & Co says will now allow a new owner to grow an already successful turnkey business. Owner Laura Burney said, "We have been welcomed and supported by an amazing community in our time here at the Clachan. We have enjoyed developing both the business and building over the last 10 years, and while it's a difficult decision to move on, we are proud to be able to pass on a thriving business to potential new owners." Tony Spence, Associate Director at Christy & Co, who is handling the sale, said this is a fantastic opportunity to acquire a well-trading, owner-operated business located in St John's town of Dalry and just on the edge of the Galloway Forest Park. Our clients have owned the business for over 10 years and now looking to exit to relocate and travel. That was by Scott Wright. The Herald on the 8th of August and the news section. Average social housing wait in majority of Scotland more than 1 year by David Ball. The Scottish Government's failure to prioritise the social housing emergency has been branded disgraceful after it was revealed average waiting times for social housing are longer than a year in most councils. Freedom of Information data showed that in 21 of the 29 councils which responded, average waiting times for social housing were longer than 12 months. Meanwhile, in 24 local authorities, the longest waits recorded were more than 20 years. Renfrewshire Council recorded a wait of longer than 68 years, so the application in question is on hold. The Tories claimed that cuts to the housing budget by the Scottish Government were to blame for the long waits for housing. Tory MSP Miles Briggs, the party's housing spokesman, said the SNP's continued failure to prioritise the social housing emergency is disgraceful, and it is vulnerable people who are suffering the consequences. People should not be left languishing in temporary accommodation for a year while they wait for a permanent home, never mind more than 2 decades, which is the reality in the most extreme cases. These figures are deeply concerning and a damning indictment of the SNP Green government's housing failures. Social housing is yet another area in which they have overpromised but undelivered, and swinging cuts to the housing market are only likely to make the crisis even worse. The nationalists have dropped the ball on social housing for too long, yet again failing to focus on Scotland's real priorities. The Scottish Government said most people on social housing waiting lists were looking to move to a new home rather than being faced with homelessness. A spokesman said Scotland had led the UK in providing affordable housing with 122,201 affordable homes delivered since 2007, with 86,240 of those for social rent, either through councils or housing associations. The 10,458 affordable homes completed in the latest year to end March 2023 is the highest annual figure since the statistical series began in 2000. Since 2007, Scotland has seen over 40% more affordable homes delivered per head of population than in England, and over 70% more than in Wales. And we have delivered over 3 times as many social rented homes per head of population than England over this period. We are making £3.5 billion available in this parliamentary term towards the delivery of more affordable and social homes. And that was by David Ball. The Herald on the 8th of August and the news section. Altyre Street, Shettleston, dozens evacuated over hazardous materials by Jodie Harrison. Around 80 people evacuated after hazardous material was found in flat in East Glasgow have returned to their homes. Police have said there is no danger to the public, but inquiries remain ongoing into the incident, which saw dozens spent the night in emergency accommodation. Roads were closed around the flat in Altyre Street, Shettleston, and a bomb disposal team was sent on the scene after the alarm was raised at 5 p.m. on Monday. Residents spoke of a panicked atmosphere as officers cleared the area. Many had to shelter in emergency accommodation overnight as the police operation unfolded. Pamela Rennie, 34, lives on nearby Traynard Avenue and told the Scottish Sun, "My daughter was playing out to the back at about 6:30 and the police appeared. I could hear them from my window telling my neighbour downstairs that we were all getting evacuated from the flat. I got my son out of his room and went and got my daughter from outside. Panic started setting in, so we just ran away to safety. But so far we have been told nothing. I asked if we were going to get back into the flat tonight, and supposedly we might not. There's a bomb team here as well with a robot. It is understood residents sheltered at the nearby Tollcross Leisure Centre, Altyre Street, Dolness Street, Ard Street and Traynard Avenue remained closed overnight. Amanda McColvin, 32, also lives nearby and told of her concerns. She said, "I'm very worried. I'm hoping it's not as serious as it looks, though. We've not been told anything apart from to take shelter in the swimming baths. It's not looking like we'll get back into the flats tonight from what I've heard police saying anyway. As soon as we were told to leave, I just ran. Police said this morning that residents had been allowed to return home. Chief Superintendent Alan Waddell said, our inquiries into the incident are ongoing and there will be a continued police presence in the area. We are working closely with our partners. I would like to thank residents and motorists for their patience whilst we dealt with the incident. There was no danger to the wider public." And that was by Jodie Harrison. The Herald on the 8th of August and news section. Exam results. Who will be waiting on them and what do they mean? By James McKerney. We tend to focus on what we think of as the school exams today, but there are lots of other courses for which people will receive results today. Education writer James McKinney explains who will be waiting and what's to come. National qualifications. Alongside National 5, Higher and Advanced Higher, there are also National 2, National 3 and National 4 courses that students have completed. These do not have a final exam but are part of the same framework as those that do. National Qualifications Group Awards. This section of qualifications is made up of National Certificates and National Progression Awards. These courses offer students a range of different pathways through a broad subject areas such as agriculture, Celtic studies, manufacturing, musical theatre, supply chain operations and much more. Skills for Work. These courses are intended to develop employability skills with a focus on practical and experiential learning. Options for study include a National 4 in automotive skills, National 5 in financial services, and a higher in health and social care. Awards. The SQA describes these as work qualifications for individual employment sectors. They are focused on skills and seek to allow certification for a wide range of people. Some options include British Sign Language, Forest Kindergarten, Internet Safety, and Principles and Practices of the Cremation Service. And that was by James McKerney. The Herald on the 8th of August and the news section. Glaswegian owner Courageous Spirit strikes Canadian deal by Kirsty Dorsey. Glasgow's Courageous Spirits has expanded its global reach after signing a deal with Canadian importers. The company, which distills and bottles its award-winning Glaswegian gin and King's Inch single malt in the city's trade scenario, struck the deal after meeting with several potential Canadian buyers at an event organised by the Department for Business and Trade. Its brands are now available in 12 countries. With packaging designed by the Glasgow School of Art graduate Paul Gray, Glaswegian Premium Gin was launched in 2018 and was followed in 2021 by the launch of King's Inch. Both have won multiple industry awards. Andy McGeer, Chief Executive and founder of Courageous Spirits, said the company will be looking to break into further markets in the future. We're delighted to have reached an agreement to export our gin and whiskey brands to Canada, he said. We've been looking to expand into North America, and this deal will open up a lot of opportunities for us. Having met with buyers there, it was clear that there was a real demand for premium produce, and they could see our brands performing well over there. It goes to show the demand that there is out there for high-quality Scottish goods. Secretary of State for Scotland, Malcolm Offord, added, "It's great to see yet another Scottish exporting success story. Courageous Spirits makes exceptional gin and whiskey, so it's no wonder there's demand across the globe." The move into the Canadian market is just another step in their growth and shows the opportunities that are out there for businesses who want to export. Mr. McGeer is the former chief executive of M&Co, the Paisley headquartered fashion retailer that fell into administration in December 2022. The company's brand and intellectual property were bought out of administration 2 months later for an undisclosed sum by AK Retail Holdings. And that was by Kirsty Dorsey.
That concludes this week's edition of the Herald Scotland podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels, rate, review, and tell your friends about our service.